We know you're walking with the ruck vest, getting that morning light. You're with the kids out for a walk. Let's go all the way back to when you wake up. What time is it? And then we can piece together, we talked about food before, coffee, bowel movement. Let's get into the details. What does it look like right through that morning for you?
So what I do is, first of all, let me say, as an author, I have found that my best work is done in the morning. And that may be specific to me, that may not be everyone. But for me, my time of intense focus and productivity is starting early and trying to get as much done by 9 o'clock in the morning. So I typically wake up somewhere in the range of between 5:30 and 6:30, somewhere in there. Kind of depends. Like if I'm watching football the night before, then it's closer to 6:30. I get up and I roll downstairs, and I've actually changed my routine. I used to be immediately coffee, boom. I've now switched. I do 2 mugs of warm water. And the first one, I will actually add a splash of apple cider vinegar to. All right. The second one, less warm, closer to room temperature, I actually add my prebiotic to. So, and you know this, Jesse, but the listeners may not. I started a company called 38 Terra. We launched in January, but this is a project that I've been working on since 2021. And I developed basically the prebiotic supplement that I always wished that I could have had for my patients. So going back 10 years, I've treated thousands of people with fiber supplements, but I always felt like they could be better. I also was frustrated because they were not transparent. Like, who knows what's in these things? No one's testing it and showing you the report. So basically that's what motivated me to start this company. And so our first product is called Daily Microbiome Nutrition, or DMN. And it includes a mix of fiber, resistant starch, and multiple polyphenols from 7 different plant-based ingredients. And this is sort of like a multivitamin for my gut. So, and I do that to start my day. Because if you think about some of these things that we're talking about, I'm of the belief that our gut microbes are central to us having good days, central to that healthy morning bowel movement, central to serotonin production. And so from my perspective, then it makes sense to start the day by feeding them. So my first is a warm glass of water with some apple cider vinegar, which, by the way, I count that as a fermented food. My second is another large glass of water, more room temperature, with my prebiotic in it. And then from that point forward, it's been about a half hour. I'm ready to move into coffee. So I typically will wait about 30 minutes in terms of my coffee. Now, in terms of getting my walk in, it depends a little bit. Sometimes I go straight to work and I start writing because it's dark outside. I always get my morning sunlight by 9 o'clock. But on other days, I will basically wake up, have my 2 mugs of water, and then I'll go and do my family thing, take my walk outside with a ruck vest, and I could go grab it if you want me to, because it's right over there. I have uh, what's the proper language for it? It's like a weighted baton or a weighted mallet.
Why
Right.
don't
And
you
it weighs
grab it if
10.
it's right there for the viewers?
Yeah. Let me grab it. Hold on. I'll be right
All
back.
right.
All right. So I'm of the belief, and I mentioned this, that I think that a little bit of morning exercise is really good for us. And when I say this, I don't mean like you could do a vigorous workout, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I'm just talking about light exercise, kind of to turn my brain on, turn my muscles on, get my heart rate up a little bit. And if you do that, you will definitely find that your energy levels increase. So I have this. Now, this right here weighs 10 pounds, and it's made of steel, and it's got what I'm describing here. For people who are not seeing us on YouTube, you should just go to the YouTube video. It's a lot easier. But basically, it's like a weighted baton. It's something on the order of maybe 16 inches. So I'm trying to think in terms of centimeters, maybe 30 centimeters.
Kind of like a small baseball bat.
Yeah, like a small baseball bat. It weighs 10 pounds. All right. So this is 4 kilos roughly, maybe a little bit more, 4.5 kilos. And so, and the thing about it has this grip. So like you can actually grip it pretty good. And what I do with this is I'll go for a walk and I just swing this thing all over the place. My neighbors probably think I'm a weirdo and I don't care. Okay.
Wait till they see you in the bathroom humming later.
Exactly. Yeah, or squatting in the woods.
Exactly. They haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but I take this thing, and the beauty of it is that it's not 10 pounds. Again, I'm a big guy. I weigh about 200 pounds. Um, it's not like pushing my muscles to an extreme, but when I take a walk for a half hour and I swing this all over the place, like including over my head, right? Or like just like doing curls with it, or kind of doing funny like turning torso type exercises with it as I walk. Um, I come back, I feel fantastic, and then hop in the shower and I'm ready to start my day. So this is an alternative. I don't typically do this at the same time as my ruck fest, but it's like sort of one or the other. But I'll just kind of work this in. So this is part of my morning routine as well. Show and tell.
All right. So you get back from the walk. What happens at that point? If you're still in the work mode, you'll get back to doing writing?
Yeah, I mean, so I try to do my writing from somewhere in the range of 6 to 9 in the morning. And then a lot of times, like during the week, I'll do that, and then I'll do a family walk at 9 o'clock. And now I realize, like, because I'm self-employed, my hours are quite different than most people who work at nine to five. But um, and then I may get back to work. But I think that the question that you may be curious about is like, so I haven't mentioned any food yet. All right. So how do I approach that? And the answer to that is that I enjoy following a time restricted eating lifestyle. And some people, and I don't know how you feel about this, I feel like maybe I need to let this go, but yeah, it's a little bit of a pet peeve to me to call intermittent fasting the same thing as time restricted eating, because it's not intermittent, it's a lifestyle, it's every day. Whereas to me, intermittent fasting is more like, hey, like 2 days a week, I'm going to fast completely. So, and the way that I approach this is that if I had one, like we've been talking about the morning, okay? But when it comes to actually timing of our meals, if I had one request to the listeners at home as a foundation to start with, it would be please just eat your food during daylight hours. Try to avoid eating at night. I understand in northern latitudes in the wintertime, like up where you live, Jesse, like it gets, I know it gets cold or it gets dark around 4 o'clock in some of those days in December. But um, try to eat during daylight hours. Try to avoid eating after 8 p.m. if you can. Try to avoid evening alcohol, evening snacks, things like this. Our body actually, it's interesting. You can eat the exact same food at different times of the day and get different results. So even though I'm sitting here and talking about how I basically don't eat breakfast most days, let me be completely honest. The science actually doesn't support that. We're actually better shifting our food and front loading it in the day. So that means eating earlier in the day and then ending our eating later in the day. But for me, and just sort of the cadence of our family, we don't have breakfast together, but we have dinner together every night. It's our family tradition. So because I want to enjoy that family dinner at around 6 p.m. every night, what I do is I typically have this eating window that exists between, on most days, 12 noon or 1 in the afternoon, and then dinner time, which is at 6 p.m. And that's my eating window for time restricted eating.
That's quite tight. Is that new for you?
Well, I'm not religiously or emotionally attached to it. I mean, I certainly have times where I, have avocado toast on the weekend or something like that. Um, it's probably a little bit tighter than I did the last time that you and I got together. And, and let me say a few quick things on time restricted eating. So I feel like it's controversial sometimes. People are like, well, it's not everything it's hyped up to be. Okay, let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you what it is. Number one, It's a way for you to control the time of day that you actually eat. And that does make a difference. So again, that you could eat the exact same meal earlier in the day and it would give you better blood sugar control. And the worst time is late at night. All right. Number two, it's a way for us to have better control over how many calories we take in. There actually is clear cut science at this point to show that for people who are overweight, which let's just be honest, in North America, this is a huge percentage of people. For people who are overweight, calorie restriction actually results in longevity. There are benefits to this, and we need to figure out, ways to make it work for ourselves. This is why the GLP-1 drugs are so popular right now, because it helps people to reduce how much they eat. But for many people, a time restricted eating approach actually can help them to facilitate that as well. And there have been studies that show that in the real world, when people follow a time restricted eating approach, they reduce their caloric intake. Last thing, I do think that there's value to resting the gut for a period of time, and time restricted eating helps to facilitate that. There are studies with 12 hours of gut rest. So 12 hours would be like if hypothetically you stopped eating at 7 p.m., then you don't eat again until at least 7 a.m. That is the starting point. And if we go beyond 12 hours of gut rest and we get into 14 hours of gut rest, we start to actually see an intensification of some of those benefits. There was a study where people had increased gut diversity through this time restricted eating pattern, and less markers of inflammation. So, is this the solution to all of our problems? Is this the one thing that we need to do? No, it's not. But it can be inserted into a healthy lifestyle pattern, and I think provide some benefit for people.
You mentioned maybe having avocado toast on the weekend. I want to get to what you break your fast during the week with. But first, let's come back to those 2 cups of water in the morning. First one with apple cider vinegar. You mentioned it's a fermented food. What other benefits, or are there other benefits you're trying to get with that?
Well, hydration's a big one. So, we I want to challenge the listeners to pay closer attention to their own signs of dehydration in the morning. One of them is the color of your urine. So I've already got you looking in the toilet bowl at your poop. Now I'm going to have you take a look at your urine as well. And when it's a deep, dark yellow, you know that your body is trying to hold on to water and it's concentrating urine because it's basically in dehydration mode. Not that you are dehydrated per se, but it is in dehydration mode, meaning that it's protecting its water supply. All right. But also pay attention to your lips. So I find that this is where it shows up the quickest. When people are dehydrated, their lips start to get chapped real quick. And when they're adequately hydrated, you have nice, lush, juicy lips. When you wake up in the morning, pay attention to where that's at. Have a couple glasses of water and see how it changes. You will see the difference. The problem is that all of us, go through a period of time where not only are we fasting, we're also we're not drinking any water at night. We get up, most people, a couple of times to go to the bathroom, go number one, and then you wake up in the morning in a dehydrated state and you don't drink water. You do other stuff, or you drink coffee, and coffee has a diuretic effect and makes you pee even more. So I think that there is value to starting our day with water. I think that there's value to continuing to consume water throughout the day. And the value includes it turning on your brain, getting more sharp and focused, more energized, turning on your kidneys. Kidneys, by the way, allow your body to excrete toxins, and turning on your gut so that you can have not only a healthy gut, but a good, healthy morning bowel movement. So these are some of the benefits that I personally have found with morning hydration.
Honing in on the apple cider vinegar piece, though, other than the fact that it's a fermented food, is there certain other benefits you're trying to get from that? Because Obviously, it's important to you if that's the first thing you're having in the morning and you only have 2 drinks before your coffee and one of them includes the ACV. It's one of those things online, you hear all these different wives' tales, just like coconut oil, that it's like a miracle cure for everything, ACV. Is there anything specific with that other than the fact that it's a fermented food that you're trying to get?
I'm most from a purely scientific perspective. I am most attached to the fact that it's a fermented food, and of course, I'm talking about raw apple cider vinegar with the mother. The mother, is basically the fact that there's the presence of live microbes. We consume a far too sterile diet, Jesse. Far too sterile. We think about the foods that exist in our supermarket that can sit on a shelf for 12 to 24 months before we even purchase them to bring them home, and they're completely unchanged. How is it possible that they don't get moldy and nothing goes wrong with them? The reason why is because what the food industry calls preservatives, I would call antibiotics. It's designed to kill microbes. And that's the reason why something is able to stay in that sort of shape um, over time. So, with 60% of the American diet being ultra processed foods, and sadly in our children, 70%, we're on a far too sterile diet. And if we look back at food traditions from not that long ago, every culture from across the world had as a celebrated part of their food traditions fermented foods. So I really think that we need to bring them back. There was a study out of Stanford um, that was published, I think, 2 years ago. And we may have talked about the last time that you and I were together because I think it came out around that time. And basically, what they did, and this was to me a fascinating study, they had people ramp up their fermented food intake. And 8 weeks later, their gut microbiome was more diverse and measures of inflammation were reduced. That's the effect that we want. And this is something that, again, our food system will not feed us this type of food unless we make an intentional play to introduce fermented foods into our diet. So the ACV is a very small, but yet quite clear example of me introducing fermented foods into their diet. Now, going beyond this, just intuitively, and what I come back to again for a moment is this approach of how do you feel? When I drink water that has a splash of ACV or a squeeze of lemon, I like the way I feel. And it does feel a little bit different than when I drink water in isolation. And I'm a big believer in water in isolation. But if you feel better with a splash of ACV or a squeeze of lemon, I'm here to tell you that don't ignore the way that you feel. I think that's important.
Is this water filtered or?
So we are in some ways blessed that we have clean water, yet simultaneously, there's not a requirement that our water needs to contain um, not just contaminants, but also the things that are intentionally put into the water to, chlorine and fluoride and things like this. Um, so we use a reverse osmosis filter in our home. And the reverse osmosis filter, from my perspective, is number one, worth every penny. And I would encourage people to think about it this way. Is there a large upfront investment? Yes. And if you use it and you replace other beverages with clean water that comes from the RO filter, you will save money for sure. And it probably won't take you too long to do that. And then our filter has a special thing where it basically, the one downside of RO is that it is so effective at removing everything from the water that there's literally nothing in there, including the minerals. So we have a special filter that actually replaces those minerals. So like magnesium and zinc and things like this get placed back into the water. Potassium.
Cool. I'm a big fan of RO, and that's what we used to.
Amazing.
So, second beverage, your supplement goes in water. I'm curious why you take that on basically an empty stomach versus waiting till when you break your fast, including it then. Is there any specific advantages while your stomach's empty having that food go to the microbiome?
Okay, so let me be the first to say there's no study on the timing from a circadian rhythm perspective of fiber supplements, which is kind of what we're talking about here. I mean, our daily microbiome nutrition includes fiber and resistant starch and polyphenols, and that's what makes it unique. But there's no study that shows us what is the perfect ideal time to use it. Here's what I know. I know that number one, I want to activate my gut in the morning. I want my gut to be functional. I want to have a healthy bowel movement, and I want it to be producing the serotonin that we've talked about. And so this is the reason why I choose to time my supplement for the morning. Because basically, as I'm starting my day, I'm turning on my gut at the exact same time. Now, I can stay in a fasted state while using this supplement because it doesn't contain sugar, or the amount of natural sugar that comes from, for example, kiwi and mango is so small that you will not be breaking your fast. So it basically supports a ketogenic or low carb lifestyle. Um, but it also simultaneously supports the gut microbes. That's the reason why I choose that time. The second thing is, to me, it's about consistency. So there's research that's been coming out, Jesse, that indicates that, interestingly, coffee, of all the foods in the Western diet, is the food that seems to have the strongest impact on the microbiome. Now, is this because coffee is the healthiest beverage or even healthiest food that exists? No, absolutely not. It's good. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It has polyphenols. It actually has some soluble fiber. But the thing about coffee is it's the one thing that when you're a coffee drinker, you do it every day. You're consistent, and it's a snowball effect. The thing that you do with the microbiome consistently, it will start with a small effect on that snowball. That snowball is a pebble, and then a marble, and then a tennis ball, and then a softball, and then a basketball. And eventually it's that big snowball careening powerfully down the side of a mountain. This is how small choices can have big, profound effects on our health. And it's true within the microbiome. The microbiome thrives off of consistency because of the momentum that you can build. So, because this supplement is, and a person could, in theory, replace this with a different supplement, it just wouldn't be the same. But um, because this supplement includes the things that our gut basically needs, the fiber, the resistant starches, and the polyphenols, by taking it at that time on a consistent daily basis, it's helping me to basically get that momentum that I'm looking for with the microbiome.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
I'm just going to say, this has been a game changer for me. I always get my morning sunlight by 9 o'clock. Through that light exposure, you are producing serotonin in the gut, which helps to stimulate your gut motility, which is a healthy gut, is going to ultimately shape your gut microbiome.